Have you ever wondered if a single thought could literally change the structure of your brain? Pause. What if I told you that neuroscientists have discovered something so profound, so simple, yet so powerful, that it's revolutionizing how we understand depression and mental healing? Today, I want to share with you a story that begins in the darkest corners of human despair and ends with one of the most hopeful discoveries in modern neuroscience. Picture this: a brilliant mind trapped in what feels like an endless winter of the soul. This is the story of Dr. Sarah Chun, a neuroscientist who found herself studying the very condition that was slowly consuming her from within. Her journey from the depths of clinical depression to groundbreaking scientific discovery would not only save her own life, but illuminate a path of hope for millions of people worldwide. Sarah had always been fascinated by the human brain. As a child, she would spend hours wondering how 3 pounds of tissue could generate every emotion, every memory, every dream we've ever had. By her early 30s, she had earned her PhD in neuroscience and was working at one of the most prestigious research institutes in the country. On paper, her life looked perfect. But behind the accolades and achievements, Sarah was drowning in a sea of darkness that seemed to have no shore. The depression had crept in slowly, like fog rolling over a landscape. At first, it was just a persistent sadness, a feeling that joy was always just out of reach. Then came the exhaustion that no amount of sleep could cure, the inability to concentrate on work that once brought her immense satisfaction, and finally, the terrifying thought that perhaps the world would be better off without her. Pause. But here's where Sarah's story takes an unexpected turn. Instead of becoming another tragic statistic, she decided to turn her scientific training on her own condition. She began to research depression not as an abstract clinical phenomenon, but as a lived experience she was intimately familiar with. What she discovered in the literature both fascinated and frustrated her. Traditional antidepressants, while helpful for many people, didn't address what Sarah was beginning to understand as the fundamental issue. The brain's neural pathways had literally been carved into patterns of negativity. Years of depressive thinking had created what neuroscientists call neural highways, well-traveled routes in the brain that made negative thoughts easier to access than positive ones. It was as if her brain had become a city where all the roads led to despair. But then Sarah stumbled upon something remarkable in her research. Studies from UCLA, Harvard, and other leading institutions were showing that certain practices could actually rewire these neural pathways. The concept is called neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections throughout life. And one of the most powerful tools for positive neuroplasticity wasn't a drug or a complicated therapy. It was gratitude. Initially, Sarah was skeptical. How could something as simple as saying thank you compete with the complex neurochemistry of depression? But as she dove deeper into the research, she discovered that gratitude practice literally lights up the brain's reward system. When we focus on what we're grateful for, the brain releases dopamine and serotonin, the same neurotransmitters that antidepressants try to regulate artificially. Dr. Robert Emmons from UC Davis had conducted groundbreaking studies showing that people who practiced gratitude for just 10 weeks showed measurable changes in brain activity. The anterior cingulate cortex, which is responsible for attention and emotional regulation, became more active. The prefrontal cortex, crucial for decision-making and emotional control, strengthened its connections. Most remarkably, these changes persisted even when people weren't actively practicing gratitude. Sarah decided to become her own test subject. Pause. Every morning, despite the crushing weight of depression, it made getting out of bed feel like climbing a mountain. She would write down 3 things she was grateful for. At first, the exercise felt hollow, almost mocking. On her darkest days, she would write things like, "I'm grateful the coffee machine worked," or "I'm grateful I remembered to feed my cat." The entries seemed pathetic to her analytical mind, but she persevered, treating it like any other scientific experiment. She needed consistent data over time. Week after week, she continued this practice, even when it felt meaningless, even when the depression whispered that she was fooling herself with cheap positive thinking. But something remarkable began to happen around week 6. Sarah started noticing small shifts in her thinking. When a colleague complimented her work, instead of immediately dismissing it or finding reasons why they were wrong, she paused and allowed herself to feel genuinely appreciative. When she walked to her car after work and saw the sunset painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, she found herself stopping to really look, rather than hurrying past in her usual cloud of rumination. The changes were subtle at first, like the first green shoots emerging from frozen ground after a long winter. But as neuroscience would predict, these small moments of gratitude were literally rewiring her brain. Each time she focused on something positive, she was strengthening neural pathways that had been dormant for years, while simultaneously weakening the depression highways that had dominated her mental landscape. By week 12, Sarah was experiencing something she hadn't felt in over 2 years: genuine moments of happiness. Not the forced positivity that well-meaning friends had suggested, but authentic joy that seemed to arise spontaneously from within. Her research was going well. Her relationships were improving, and for the first time in years, she was excited about the future. But Sarah's story doesn't end with her personal recovery. As a scientist, she was compelled to understand exactly what was happening in her brain and to share this knowledge with others. She designed a comprehensive study examining the neurological effects of gratitude practice on individuals with clinical depression. Using advanced brain imaging technology, Sarah and her team tracked the neural changes in 2 groups of depressed individuals over 16 weeks. One group practiced gratitude daily, writing down 3 things they were thankful for, and spending a few minutes really feeling the appreciation. The control group received standard talk therapy without the gratitude component. The results were stunning. Pause for emphasis. The gratitude group showed significant increases in gray matter volume in areas associated with emotional regulation and stress management. The amygdala, often called the brain's alarm system and hyperactive in depression, showed decreased reactivity to negative stimuli. Meanwhile, the hippocampus, crucial for memory formation and emotional processing, actually grew larger. Perhaps most remarkably, the research revealed that gratitude practice doesn't just create temporary mood improvements. It literally rewires the brain's default mode network, the neural circuits that are active when we're not focused on specific tasks. In depressed individuals, this network typically loops through negative self-referential thoughts. But after consistent gratitude practice, the default mode network began incorporating more positive, appreciative patterns of thinking. This means that even when participants weren't consciously practicing gratitude, their brains were more likely to naturally notice positive aspects of their experience. It was as if gratitude had become their brain's new habit, the path of least resistance, rather than a difficult uphill battle against ingrained negativity. Dr. Alex Korb, a neuroscientist at UCLA, explains this phenomenon beautifully. Gratitude shifts your focus from what your life lacks to the abundance that is already present. And when you focus on abundance, abundance grows in your brain through increased neural connections and strengthened positive feedback loops. But how exactly does this work on a molecular level? When we experience genuine gratitude, several fascinating things happen simultaneously in our brains. The neurotransmitter dopamine is released in the reward pathway, creating a sense of pleasure and motivation. Serotonin levels increase, improving mood and creating feelings of well-being. The stress hormone cortisol decreases, reducing inflammation throughout the body and brain. Even more fascinating is what happens with oxytocin, often called the love hormone. Gratitude practice increases oxytocin production, which not only improves our relationships with others, but also strengthens our connection to ourselves. This neurochemical cascade creates what researchers call an upward spiral. Positive emotions generate more positive emotions, creating momentum toward mental health and resilience. The research also revealed something unexpected about timing. Many people assume that we need something good to happen before we can feel grateful. But the neuroscience shows the opposite. Feeling grateful actually primes our brains to notice more positive experiences. It's as if gratitude creates a mental filter that allows more joy, beauty, and connection to enter our awareness. This discovery has profound implications for understanding depression. Traditional models view depression as a chemical imbalance that requires external intervention. But Sarah's research suggests that depression might be better understood as a pattern of neural activity that can be gradually shifted through intentional practice. The brain that learned to be depressed can also learn to be grateful, hopeful, and resilient. One of the most moving aspects of Sarah's study was the qualitative feedback from participants. Many reported that the gratitude practice didn't just improve their mood. It fundamentally changed their relationship with life itself. Instead of feeling like passive victims of their circumstances, they began to see themselves as active participants in their own healing and growth. A participant named Michael wrote, "For 20 years, I felt like my brain was a prison I could never escape. Depression was my reality, and I accepted that happiness was something other people experienced. But after practicing gratitude, I realized that my brain wasn't broken. It was just stuck in old patterns. Learning that I could actually change those patterns gave me hope for the first time in decades." This sense of agency, the belief that we have some power over our mental states, turns out to be crucial for recovery. When people understand that their brains are capable of change, they become more willing to engage in the daily practices that promote healing. They stop seeing themselves as helpless victims of their neurochemistry and start viewing themselves as active participants in their recovery. But Sarah's research also revealed an important nuance about gratitude practice. Not all gratitude is created equal when it comes to rewiring the brain. Superficial or forced gratitude, simply going through the motions without genuine feeling, produces minimal neurological changes. The key is what researchers call embodied gratitude, really feeling the appreciation in your body, not just thinking it in your head. This means taking time to savor positive experiences, to let the feeling of thankfulness wash over you, rather than just checking it off a mental list. It means being specific in your gratitude rather than generic. Instead of, "I'm grateful for my family," try, "I'm grateful for the way my daughter laughed so hard at dinner tonight that she couldn't stop giggling." The specificity helps the brain encode the positive memory more vividly, strengthening the neural pathways associated with joy and connection. The research also shows that gratitude works best when it becomes a sustained practice rather than a one-time exercise. Just as depression developed through repeated patterns of negative thinking over months or years, healing happens through consistent patterns of positive focus over time. The brain needs repetition to build new neural highways, and gratitude provides the repetition necessary for lasting change. Sarah's personal journey and scientific research converged in a powerful realization. Healing from depression isn't about returning to who you were before. It's about becoming someone new, someone whose brain is wired for resilience, appreciation, and hope. The neural changes that occur through gratitude practice don't just eliminate negative symptoms. They build positive mental resources that make you stronger than you were before the depression began. This understanding has revolutionary implications for how we think about mental health treatment. Instead of focusing solely on reducing symptoms, we can focus on building positive neural networks that naturally crowd out depressive patterns. It's the difference between trying to eliminate weeds from a garden versus planting so many beautiful flowers that there's no room for weeds to grow. Today, 5 years after beginning her gratitude practice, Sarah continues to thrive both personally and professionally. Her research has been published in leading journals and has influenced treatment approaches for depression around the world. But more importantly, she has become living proof that the brain's capacity for change extends far beyond what we previously thought possible. Her work has inspired a new field called positive neuroplasticity, the study of how we can intentionally strengthen neural networks associated with well-being, resilience, and happiness. This research is showing that practices like gratitude, mindfulness, loving-kindness meditation, and savoring positive experiences can literally sculpt our brains toward greater mental health. The implications extend beyond individual healing. As more people understand that mental wellness is something we can actively cultivate rather than simply hope for, we're seeing shifts in how families, schools, and communities approach mental health. Children are being taught gratitude practices alongside reading and math. Workplaces are implementing appreciation exercises to improve both employee well-being and productivity. Even hospitals and clinics are incorporating gratitude practices into treatment protocols. But perhaps the most profound implication of this research is what it tells us about human potential. If something as simple as focused appreciation can literally rewire the brain, what other capacities for transformation lie dormant within us? Sarah's story suggests that we are far more malleable, far more capable of change and growth than we ever imagined. This doesn't mean that depression is simply a choice or that gratitude is a cure-all. Clinical depression is a serious condition that often requires professional treatment, including therapy and sometimes medication. But what Sarah's research proves is that our brains are not fixed entities doomed to repeat the same patterns forever. We have the power to participate in our own healing and transformation. The key insight from neuroscience is that the brain changes based on where we direct our attention. If we consistently focus on what's wrong, lacking, or painful, we strengthen neural networks associated with suffering. But if we intentionally and consistently focus on what's going well, what we appreciate, and what brings us joy, we strengthen neural networks associated with well-being. This isn't about denying problems or pretending everything is perfect. It's about training the brain to notice the full spectrum of human experience, including the beauty, goodness, and wonder that exist alongside the challenges. It's about building mental resilience that allows us to navigate difficulties without being overwhelmed by them. So how can you begin to apply this research in your own life? Start where Sarah started, with 3 simple things you're grateful for each day. But remember, the key is feeling the gratitude, not just thinking it. Take a moment to really appreciate whatever you're focusing on. Let the feeling settle in your body. Notice how it feels different from just intellectual acknowledgement. Be specific in your gratitude. Instead of, "I'm grateful for good weather," try, "I'm grateful for how the morning sunlight streaming through my window made my coffee cup glow like amber." Specificity helps your brain encode positive memories more vividly and makes the gratitude feel more real and meaningful. Consider expanding your practice over time. You might start with a gratitude journal, then add moments of appreciation throughout your day. When you eat something delicious, pause and really taste it. When someone shows you kindness, let yourself fully receive it. When you witness something beautiful in nature, take a few extra seconds to really see it. Remember that this is a practice, not a performance. Some days will be easier than others. On difficult days, your gratitude might be as simple as being thankful that the day is almost over or that you have a warm bed to sleep in. That's not only okay, it's exactly how the practice works. You're training your brain to find something positive even in challenging circumstances. Also consider sharing your gratitude with others. Expressing appreciation to people in your life not only strengthens your relationships, but also reinforces the positive neural pathways in your own brain. When you thank someone specifically for something they did, you're simultaneously rewiring your brain for connection and joy. Most importantly, be patient with yourself and the process. Sarah's transformation didn't happen overnight, and neither will yours. The brain changes gradually, and the most profound shifts often happen so subtly that you don't notice them, until you look back and realize how different your inner experience has become. The beautiful truth that emerges from this research is that healing and growth are always possible. No matter how dark your mental landscape has become, no matter how entrenched the patterns of suffering seem to be, your brain retains the capacity to learn new ways of being. The neural pathways carved by years of depression are not permanent highways. They're simply well-worn paths that can be gradually replaced by new routes toward appreciation, joy, and hope. Sarah's story reminds us that some of the most powerful healing happens not through complex interventions, but through simple practices consistently applied. The brain that learned to be depressed can learn to be grateful. The mind that became skilled at finding problems can become equally skilled at finding beauty. The heart that forgot how to feel joy can remember, one moment of appreciation at a time. As you begin or deepen your own gratitude practice, remember that you're not just improving your mood or reducing stress. You're literally participating in the reshaping of your brain, contributing to your own neural evolution, and joining millions of people around the world who are discovering that the capacity for transformation lives within each of us, waiting to be activated through the simple but profound act of appreciation. The question isn't whether your brain can change. Neuroscience has proven that it can. The question is, what kind of brain do you want to build? Pause today. With this very next moment, you have the power to begin sculpting neural networks of gratitude, resilience, and hope. Your future self is waiting for you to start. Take a deep breath, look around you right now, and find one thing, however small, that you can genuinely appreciate. Feel that appreciation in your body. Let it warm your chest, and know that in this simple moment, you are literally beginning to rewire your brain toward healing and happiness. The science is clear, the path is available, and the transformation begins now.